Everybody, welcome to the webinar here. I've got myself, Kurtis from Parade. I've also got Cody Thacker from ReedTMS Logistics and Ryan Schreiber from CarrierDirect. So we'll kick off, and today we're going to be talking about some hot topics in the industry that we're all facing today, either from the brokerage, consulting, or technology background. And we're going to look at items around the TMS, look at trends or lasting shifts, also staffing, and then what does customer experience look like in each of our businesses. But before we kick off, I'd like to introduce everybody on the call. And Cody, why don't you kick off with an introduction on yourself, a little bit about you, and then we'll go to Ryan next.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. This is Cody Thacker. I'm the Director of Pricing at ReedTMS Logistics. We are a family-owned and operated asset-based third party down here in Tampa. I've been in the industry roughly 15 years. During that time, I've held roles in carrier management, procurement, pricing, and sales. Prior to joining Reed, I graduated from Marshall University and spent 10 plus years at C.H. Robinson.
That's great. And thank you so much for joining us, Cody. I think you're going to have a really unique kind of perspective coming from the brokerage aspect on the topics today. Ryan, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ryan Schreiber. I'm the Director of Engagement at CarrierDirect. I've been in freight just about 10 years and worked with CarrierDirect for about a year. Started my career at Echo and then started a couple of brokerages along the way. CarrierDirect is a management consulting and technology delivery company working exclusively in transportation.
Awesome. And that's a great perspective that you'll have as well. I think you'll be able to give us a really neutral kind of version of items as we go through this, kind of what you've seen at your customers, either in the trucking, brokerage, or just overall supply chain side of the business. But thanks for introductions, guys. Myself, Kurtis Tryber from Parade. I'm the manager of strategic sales here at Parade. But before coming into the technology side, I successfully ran a brokerage of my own for about 7 years. So, you know, when I kind of look at technology, I'll kind of have some of that brokerage expertise as well. But the first topic I want to get into today, and I think this is especially a hot topic over the last week or so, and it's surrounding the TMS. And I think that, you know, Ryan, maybe we'll kick off with you, but I'd like to better understand when you talk to clients and really just your perspective, what is the TMS for today? You know, what should companies be looking at this within their businesses, and what are they using it for today?
That's a great question. You know, we're talking a lot with clients about changing the conversation around TMS. So TMS at its core is really like about load execution, and these softwares have sort of ballooned and bloated out to try and solve all of the world problems in one piece of software. So really our conversations with our clients are about sort of stripping down the conversation to what are the business problems I'm trying to solve with software, and how do I build a technology strategy around those business problems. Certainly figuring out how to do load execution is an important part of that, but there's much, much more that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely right. You know, this is this is the behemoth in the room that's trying to solve everything at once, and I agree. Cody, from the brokerage perspective, you know, how do you view the TMS today?
So similar to Ryan, it's a platform that we utilize for basically the planning, coordinating, the managing of the customer's book of business, kind of a housing mechanism. Mm-hmm. The issue that we see is that a lot of those products are kind of straight out of the box, and there's not a lot of upfront customization, which Ryan also hit on. So for us, it's about taking that out of the box product and turning it into the spine of the organization. How we can develop strategic, say, integrations with the right tech providers to kind of create our own sauce to compete in this space.
Yeah, like I get this question all the time. To your point about it being out of the box and not really a lot of upfront customization, I get the question all the time. Hey, I'm a brand new broker, or I'm a small broker. Like, what do I need from technology? What's my TMS? Those people, I tell them, listen, if you're under $30 million, you don't need to be thinking a ton about technology. I mean, certainly you need to be insightful about what tools you're bringing to the table, but focus on your business. Don't go and buy some huge software that you're not actually going to be able to use in your business and that you're going to have to go through all these implementations on. Keep it simple until you get to $30 million, because you need to be focused on building your business. So Cody, in terms of kind of thinking about what you mentioned, the customization element, it all depends on where you are in the growth of your business. And certainly Reed's much further down the road than most companies. But I think that's really one thing that I'm passionate about, sort of digging in with a conversation of, not every company needs to build. Not every company needs to build right away. That's why it starts with what your business problems are and what do you need to do today to improve your business. That's not always technology.
I couldn't agree more with you, Ryan. And I think, just to kind of piggyback that a little bit would be, I think maybe the biggest mistake you could make at that $30 to $50 million in gross revenue would be to go buy an out-of-the-box product and then start putting into play a lot of customizations that, again, may not make sense as you grow into your business. Spend a lot of time undoing what you've already created.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we hear like, hey, I want to buy some software that I need to, that I can grow into, right? Or like, I want to do something with software that like will last me for a long time. And the reality of that is software, especially today, is constantly changing. Kurtis, I think you can speak to this really, really well. Software is constantly changing. Buying a piece of software because of the problems it might solve for you 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, or building a piece of software for the problems that you might be facing 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, is throwing darts at a dartboard a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I totally agree with that. And I get the same question that you mentioned, small brokerages coming to me, 30 million and below, and they say, what TMS should I buy? Or, what technologies should I be thinking about? And from my perspective, I would tell them the same thing. Get something, that's going to be the foundation to where you can begin running your business. But I also, one of the challenges I see in any TMS platform is the potential blocker for third-party innovation. So I always give the people advice, get something that's you're going to be able to do your basic execution under, so you can build into it. You can build your business from there. But think about, making sure that you do pick a system that is going to be playing nice with new softwares that come into play. Because like you said, software is changing very quickly, especially in our space. So if you pick a provider today, that's not going to integrate with anything down the road, you're boxing yourself into letting the TMS essentially control your business and not allowing you to have that freedom to install different changing solutions that you may need down the road.
Kurtis, you bring up a really great point, which is you have to have you have to have a strategy. You have to have a long-term plan. Yep. My point from earlier around changing the conversation from what TMS do I need to what's my technology strategy is all about developing a plan over the course that you execute over the course of 3 to 5 years, right? Yep. I mean, Arrive Logistics is a great example of this. Arrive Logistics is going to be probably $900 million or $1 billion run rate this year. And they started their business off of DAT's Keypoint. And they had a plan for how over the course of 5 to 6 years, they were going to move away from Keypoint. This is not a CarrierDirect sponsored message, what I'm going to say next, but as you know, Ryan, am the founder of Friends Don't Let Friends TMS. And it is all about the fact that TMSs, whether they are off the shelf or most of the currently built TMS systems that are proprietary, have been built in a way where they are blockers to innovation.
Yep.
And whether that's, and that's your point about playing nice. The off-the-shelf providers have been gatekeepers or are gatekeepers to what types of third-party softwares you can use. It's not limited to the off-the-shelf providers. Because of the way some of these older TMSs are architected to solve all of the world's problems, it is really difficult to interface with third-party. So the whole point of a technology strategy, whether you're a $5 million company, a pre-revenue company, or a multi-billion-dollar company, it's about having a strategy, developing a strategy for software that solves your business problems and executing that over the course of 3 to 5 years.
Yep. Yep. And I think that kind of comes, gets us right into our next topic of like trends or like lasting shifts, right? When we talk about, current TMS solutions playing nice with third parties, one of the big things that is now pretty much the buzzword of the week, at least in our space, is, things like Book Now, where you've got TMS solutions that are, the core foundation of all the freight brokerage businesses out there today. But now you've got kind of some third parties coming out and saying, now the new trend is this Book Now type technology. You've got multiple providers out there, selling that piece, Parade being one of them. You've got Truck Stop, DATs entering the space. You've got Trucker Tools. What are your guys' thoughts? Is this Book Now like a trend that's going to last? Is there, what are the long-term implications of these solutions coming out? Cody, for you on the brokerage side, I'd love to hear, is this a trend for you guys? Is it a buzzword? Is it something you're thinking about?
So, we're all in on this. Our thoughts are that the transportation industry as a whole is evolving very rapidly. We talk a lot about, revenue per head count, so on and so forth. And it's all about how do we get a shipment into our system as quickly as possible, and how do we have it exit our system as quickly as possible. And so this type of technology, whether it's the freight matching, the tracking, anything that's autonomous, that doesn't revolve with a click, it's helping us drive savings to our bottom line, whether that's in headcount, better processes, overall better enjoyment for the carrier. So let's think about that. How do we make our business easy how do we make it easy to do business with ourselves? We recognize that the space that we play in, we're not the biggest, we're not the smallest. So driving a carrier to, say, some sort of proprietary app or tracking device is probably a farce. So for us, it's developing the right technology partners that streamline our process to make it as easy as possible for our carriers and our customers to piggyback on.
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like this is more of a lasting shift. You guys are moving to a digital, through like a digital transformation where you want to add some of these, whether it's tracking, Book Now, you want to put these capabilities in your business, to set you up for success down the road, right?
Yeah, we're roughly a $240 million gross revenue organization. And so for us to pretend that, we can just do everything through sheer force, we can't. We have to be willing to buy in and adopt this type of technology. Now, are we always going to be the first to adopt? Maybe not, but we tend to kind of put a toe in the water, ask a lot of questions, check out a couple of different platforms and make an informed decision that makes sense for us. Like Ryan said, a lot of the decisions that we're making are with the mindset of what we're going to evolve to in the next 3 to 5 years. We're already talking about those. And so, for us, we look at this as, again, something that's not going away, more of something that we need to get on board with, find out the best way to go about it. How do we transition as much of our freight into this type of platform as we can?
Yep. No, and I think that's a great direction to be going. And you're definitely thinking about that, as Ryan said, that 3 to 5 year plan, I think is key, rather than, just jumping on a trend, making those informed decisions to make sure this is something that's going to be around, a place where you want to put your business. Ryan, what do you think? And it doesn't have to be, I think Book Now is just one buzzword that we're looking at, right? But like, what are some other things that you see in the industry that maybe are trends that, maybe won't be around, right?
It's too early to say some of the trends that really won't be around. At the risk of being redundant, I think obviously any piece of software that's not really focused on solving a business problem is the ones that are going to die. Mm-hmm. Intermediaries aren't really in this industry. We talk a lot about how there's this old school mentality, and that they're slow to adopt change. That's not really true of intermediaries. Right? Like, intermediaries are much more apt to understand that they are just a platform and that technology plays an integral role in their business. Now, Cody, to your point, they may not always be early adopters, right? And I wrote I published an article, an op-ed in FreightWaves week before last when the news from Book Now came out about how, this digital freight matching seems like it's sort of jumped the chasm of adoption and is a little bit safer. So I think realistically, any piece of software that really meets people where they are and removes friction, Cody, that's exactly what you were talking about, right? The winners in the future as businesses are the ones that figure out how to remove as much friction as possible in terms of doing business with them. And that's a lot of the work that we're doing with our clients these days, is how do we make it as easy as possible for shippers and trucking companies to do business with them if they're an intermediary, right? And some of that is going to be platforms like Book Now or Book It Now. And there's going to be a lot of different sort of winners. Kurtis, you know that I'm a huge proponent of natural language processing and natural language as the future of user interfaces, but that's really just because that's meeting people where they are, right? And Cody, to your point about proprietary apps, et cetera, certainly there is a place for some of those somewhere, but carriers and shippers are going to interact with you the ways that they want to interact with you. You need to meet them where they are and remove as much friction as possible.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that, to that whole thing, think about like 5 or 6 years ago when MacroPoint and FourKites popped into existence, and anybody who was booking freight at the time, I can tell you, I managed about 20 people doing it. It was, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to get Billy, Joe Schmo, truck driver guy to download it? He's got a flip phone. He doesn't even check email. How do we get this to even work? And now we're MacroPoint and FourKiting roughly 80% of our truckload moves. I don't see this as any different. Yeah, you always have a little bit of pushback initially, then you get the adoption phase, and then people really figure out how to mold it to the individual business to generate their own results, and then it takes off.
Yeah, and I think that's what we see. I mean, you see a lot of big companies adopting this stuff. So, I mean, I think, if we had to decide trend or lasting shift, this is probably going to be a lasting shift. And I think it's more than just Book Now. I just think it's just digital interaction where carriers are going to be able to easily interact with their brokerage customer, and where that brokerage customer is going to be able to easily interact with their shipper customer through kind of these digital pipes that are being laid by different technology providers, whether it's TMS or third party. I think that we've got an interesting next 5 or so years as we see just the total interaction between all parties involved more streamlined. So, we've got new technologies coming into the space, right? And you've got multiple vendors outside of TMS, third party. When we think about the staffing, and Cody, you touched on this at the beginning a little bit of, when we adopt technology, is it going to be focused on maybe making our headcount more efficient, that sort of thing. And I think that when we look at brokerage, we've got really a couple key people in the brokerage, and carrier sales, I think is, in my opinion, kind of an untapped market. But I wonder, Cody, from your perspective, I wonder how you're thinking about technology and like your carrier sales team, right? Because back in your CH days, there's 1,500, 2,000 plus carrier sales reps. I don't know how many there are today, but just look at your business. Like, how has that shifted in your guys' business, adding technology in your headcount?
So for us, as we strive for certain revenue and headcount ratios, there's always going to be tough decisions. We look at it more of not can we get more done with less, but how much more can we get done with our current landscape? How many heads do we currently have? How can we push that forward? Obviously, there's challenges, but at the end of the day, I think that we found a pretty nice balance between leveraging our technology, leveraging our people, creating a best-in-class experience for both our customers and our carriers, which at the end of the day, that's what it's really about for us, or just in general. You want repeat business. So how can we meet both of those parties where they want to buy?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great perspective. Ryan, what do you see? Like, you consult for a lot of businesses, and I know this probably comes up, So I wonder, even maybe it's a trucking company, maybe it's a brokerage. I wonder how, some of the other people, maybe outside of Cody's individual business, like how do some other people think about this technology and headcount position?
Yeah, really great question. It's about doing more with the same amount of people. It's not about cutting people or finding ways to like shrink your workforce. It's about enabling the people to do more. The future is going to require different skill sets, and so like, can we reskill our workers to be able to be the future like workers that we need? It's really about focusing in on that and allowing the users to focus on the things that they're best at and letting technology do the things that technology is good at, right?
Yeah,
humans are good at building relationships. Computers aren't. How do we allow people to do that and let computers solve the problems of like looking up delivery numbers or or sending rate confirmations, things that are like simple to solve in that sense?
No, and I think that's right. I mean, I think the position there is, let's add technology to empower our current team, right? But I think maybe, let's say we are there, right? We've got technology added, and one of the things that even I noticed just talking to different brokerages about this position and their staffing was, compensation structure, I think, is a huge driver to whether this is possible or not. And so one of the recent things that I think we've all known about this and maybe not, right? But I came across kind of two different carrier sales models, because that's kind of where I focus on today, is like within that carrier sales aspect of the brokerage business. And I think the traditional carrier sales model has always been move loads, generate revenue, and create repeat business with carriers. I think we're all aware of that. But I'm now seeing, some companies moving to this different goal, like this different North Star for a carrier sales rep. That's not, how many loads did you move? How much revenue did you generate? It's actually around, how much automation or like app usage or digital usage did you get this carrier to kind of look at? So you've got companies that are, let's use Uber Freight, for example, their carrier reps, their whole goal is, how much automation can we drive? So it kind of creates a different position where they're saying, yes, we want our carrier sales headcount. Yes, we've got a lot of people, but we're kind of refocusing their efforts on, can we get these people to get our carriers to use our technology, and how much of that can we make happen? And that's that metric that they're grading on. Do you see?
Kurtis, you're talking about what I would call the cost of service, right? And like traditionally in brokerage, we're used to thinking about revenue minus cost of goods sold as profitability. But
Yeah.
there's another, like there's a lot more that goes into being profitable and having the right like labor mix. And that's what I would call cost of service. And the way that plays out, particularly on the carrier side, is around like one and done versus carrier reusage, right? And so even to the extent that you're like, the way that plays out in technology is driving them to certain automation tools, and that's operating model and compensation. It's a number of things there, but it's really about getting intentional of what does it cost to actually operate this business? What is the customer requirements, and how much does that cost, and how is this carrier easier or harder for us to work with? That's the friction piece from before, right? And that costs us money. Uber is a good example of that. I believe that it's Uber, and I could be wrong, but I believe that it's Uber, that if you if you try and book a load with a human versus booking through the platform, the human can't pay you as much money. And I've heard that from a number of different sort of like platform businesses that maybe have a human component for booking, right? That if you're booking through the app, there's more money available to you because it is an easier workflow for them and it costs them less money.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard that exact same comp structure exist, and I think that we'll start to see that exist, even more. Kind of going in, this kind of leads me a little bit into our last topic. Right, I think the last little bit we've talked about this carrier sales, we've talked about carriers, we've talked about brokerages doing making it easy for those carriers to do businesses with ReedTMS, for example, like Cody mentioned. What does this mean? Let's go upstream. If we're so focused today on adding technology into the intermediaries, for example, and making it easier for carriers to do business with the brokerages, what does this do for our customer expectations, right? So Cody, maybe on your side, what are you guys seeing? I wonder how your customers are thinking about this. If they're seeing you make these investments into technology, what are they expecting in return?
Oh gosh. So it's visibility. I think that, a few years back, customers would ask, so what technology do you have? And it was almost like kind of a differentiator, if you will. We have this new tech, it does this, it does that, we can share it with you. How's that sound? Oh, that's great. Now it's more like that's something that's expected. All right. So for us, it's about understanding our customers, what their expectations are, attempting to create a connection and leverage our success on future business. That's kind of what the customer experience means for us at Reed.
So it almost sounds like it's like commoditized. Is it?
It has become that way. It's like, in my opinion, I think the differentiators are price. And that's the Uber effect, the convoy effect. We've talked about what they're doing from, in the automation piece, but that automation allows them to offer cost savings to their customers. Does that mean that Reed or XPO or Arrive or Calvary, whomever else they're doing business with, has a different set of parameters that they're operating within? No, it just means that somehow we have to creatively sell our services and the solutions that we can provide within the framework of their book of business with our resources. And, that's where it's gotten challenging because, we have to move our freight quick in order to be profitable in the current landscape.
Interesting. Yeah. Brian, what about you? I mean, do you see and maybe it's your customers, right? But think about your customer's customer. This technology investment that these people are making, whether they're buying like a CarrierDirect custom solution, for example, what are they seeing upstream? Are they building this technology because maybe their customer is pressuring them to get to the status quo, the norm?
Yeah, so Cody, you were talking a little bit about how certain investments in technology have really become table stakes, right? Like you mentioned on the last point around how Macro Point a couple of years ago was like, how are we going to get these people to download it and how are we going to get them to do it? And now visibility visibility meaning specifically tracking is table stakes, but there's other parts of visibility that we're hearing are what customers are coming to demand. And that's really I was at the Stiefel conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a shipper panel where there was Walmart and Academy Sports and Armada, and they were talking about tell me something I don't know about my business. That's what I want from visibility from you. Tracking, table stakes. If you can't do that, don't even call. But outside of that, how are you giving me insight into how I'm doing business? And then how do I make that actionable? So as an example, how are you helping me get better with my internal operations? Can you offer me dynamic appointment scheduling? Can you offer me insights about my dwell time at different locations that's more specific than hey, I get a lot of detention in Houston, right? Can you actually tell me, hey, I get a lot of detention in Houston on Friday at 3 p.m., but I never have a problem Tuesday at 2 p.m. or at 2 o'clock on Friday or whatever those things are. Getting really specific on the insights that actually allow shippers to be able to do it. That's the type of visibility that we're hearing is the sort of outcomes of investments in technology. And shippers are demanding that. And they're saying, if you can't help me make my business better, it doesn't matter that your price is good. That's only a small input for me. Well, it's a big input, but it's only one input for me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And us at Parade, we don't sell to shippers. That's not one of our customers per se, but we always do, even me personally, I always have conversations with, maybe some of my old customers just to kind of keep a pulse on what people are expecting. And I think that at the end of the day, they are looking for, I think the term visibility is a very broad term. They are looking for, what else can you tell me? A good example, I was on a call with RCS, just listening to how they navigate in their business. And, a core challenge that they were trying to solve was, should I ship this LTL right now, or should I wait a day and ship it full truckload and combine it with those shipments?
Perfect, great example.
And it's, and right there, Coyote, maybe that's their broker. They don't have that information, right? That's just not part of their strategy. And maybe
help with decisioning is a big one. I agree with that. That's what I would call decisioning.
Yeah.
Helping them make a better decision.
Guys, we talk a lot about the technology and how customers perceive it and the visibility on their end, but I'll also take a step back and say that this has helped my business. Customers holding us accountable to a different level than ever before has forced our hands to, you hit on dwell time. That's something that we look at. We're measuring dwell time to identify, is this a proverbial shipper of choice, or is this someone that we may want to steer clear of for these reasons? So this same data that we're providing them with is actually providing us with more actionable, accurate information than we've ever had before as well. So we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So like the shipper's expectation of providing more data, I mean, really just data analytics on really anything to help them do their business better, is forcing the brokerage take a much harder look and say, hey, if we're going to go 2 hours extra detention on this shipper every single time, drop them. It's just not worth it at this point. But, you don't look at that. If that data is so granular spread across the organization, like you don't ever see that over time. So that is interesting that you're actually seeing, they want data from you because you're producing it, you're making better decisions to potentially maybe not work with that particular shipper anymore. That's
yeah, exactly. And I'll say this, I'll even take it another step. In my past life, I never saw assets outside of, hey, I've got this load. Do you have a truck? And when you sit back and you see an asset operation firsthand, we've got 100 trucks, and you start to recognize that, if a truck if a power unit sits at a shipper for 2 hours and 17 minutes versus an hour and 27 minutes, what that does over the course of maybe that day, but probably more importantly over that week or 2 weeks, a month period, when you're looking at that truck and what it did and the revenue and profitability within that unit. It's those types of little pieces of information that, like you said, Kurtis, it makes decisions when who to do business with and maybe who not to do business with, or we'll do business but at this price point instead of this price point.
That last point, Cody, is a great one around the price point. What we hear from our asset clients is actually, and what makes the most mathematical sense actually, is the problem isn't so much that it's 1 hour versus 7 hours versus 13 hours versus 20 minutes to load. It's the variability. If it's predictably 13 hours to get loaded, you can plan for that and price that appropriately. Variability is the problem. And that's the point about getting granular with the data. It is not helpful to say your average load time is 77 minutes. What's helpful is to say your average load time is 77 minutes. The variability of that is 20 minutes to 13 hours. And if you the median average, those things, hey, if I throw out the super edge case, whatever, the variability is this. Variability is the problem with detention. Variability is the problem with asset utilization.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's tough to make decisions on variability. It's tough to predict if it is so, if that window is so big. Well, yeah, I think that kind of wraps up that last point, guys. And I want to thank you again. The topics that we touched on today, TMS, trends, lasting shifts, staff, and then customer experience. I think these are all things that we need to be constantly, on the pulse. Anybody listening, big company, small company, whatever, wherever you're at in your business, like these are things that you need to be thinking about, maybe not every day, but, make decisions and be thinking about these topics here. Kind of to wrap it up, I want to give everybody a really good feel for what each of our businesses do. So Cody, give me the elevator pitch on ReedTMS, and then where we can reach out to you to maybe find out more.
Yeah, so like I said, ReedTMS is a family-owned and operated asset-based logistics provider. We're down here in Tampa, Florida. We operate roughly 100 power units and 550 trailers. We offer high quality brokerage and freight management services on the brokerage side, while TMS is an asset-based provider for dry van, refrigerated and dedicated and private fleet services. It's our mission to enhance transportation networks through a professionally managed transportation experience accomplished by understanding and delivering on expectations. To learn a little bit more about our business, please reach out via our website, ReedTMS.com.
Awesome, thanks. And then I'm sure you're on LinkedIn, right, Cody Thacker?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn.
All right, perfect. And then Ryan, give us a little bit on CarrierDirect, and then where can we reach out to you to find out more?
CarrierDirect, management consulting and technology delivery company, focused exclusively on freight. So we essentially have 3 lines of business. We have traditional management consulting, which is technology, which is like process improvement or creating a new business unit for you, reorganization. Technology strategy, what are your 3 to 5 year technology strategy? What are frameworks for making buy versus build decisions, and then organizational changes that go along with that. Kurtis, you talked earlier about changing compensation to make sure you're driving your carrier reps to use automation tools. That's a part of a technology strategy, right? You need to do those things to make sure that adoption is proper. And then we do proprietary software development. So we build software for our clients. Like I said, we work exclusively in transportation. So that's carriers, brokers, 3PLs, 4PLs, and then also technology players in this that service the space like Project 44. Some of our clients on the carrier and broker side, anywhere from like $20 million in revenue all the way up through JB Hunt, Werner, FedEx Freight, GE Transportation, CRST are all clients of ours. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely the best place to find me. And you can see some of my crazy ramblings.
And if they don't find you on LinkedIn, they probably didn't go to LinkedIn.
Yeah, they certainly know how to like access the website if they have not seen what I have to say.
Right. Well, good stuff, guys. And my name, and like I said, I'm Kurtis with Parade. You know, Parade's a leading freight workflow platform. We empower modern transportation companies to efficiently manage relationships, analyze capacity, and automate load bookings on a unified private platform. We leverage artificial intelligence and NLP really just to reimagine outdated workflows and bring our industry kind of into the new age. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kurtis Tryber, or go to our website, parade.ai. All right, well, thank you guys for joining me, and listeners, thank you guys for tuning in and listening to us talk just about some of the topics in the industry that we're all facing today. If you guys want to leave some comments below, reach out to any of us. We're, like I said, this is a meeting of the minds between a brokerage executive, a technology person, and then somebody in the consulting. We'd love to talk to anybody that's got challenges in their businesses, whether it be operation, technology. Happy to help, and you can reach out to any of us. Feel free to leave the comments below, and then thank you guys for joining us. We'll see ya.